Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So it's been a while since I've actually sat down and done a video, and it kind of feels weird, I'm not gonna lie, but it is super rainy and cold today, so I thought it would be the absolute perfect day to do a fall recommendations list. Fall is my favorite season of the year. I love the homeliness and the warmth that comes from the season. I love the leaves changing. I love kind of the feeling of comfort and the feeling of change that comes with fall. And I also really love all of the scents of fall. I love the rain scents, the scent of dying leaves. That sounds really morbid. And I also get really excited when Bath & Body Works brings out their new fall candles. And so I just wanted to make a video to commemorate that. So let's get into the recommendations. So the first book on my fall recommendations list is one that is very, very special to me. It's a book that I read in my childhood and I absolutely love it. And that is Sabriel by Garth Nix. So this story is essentially about Sabriel, who is a girl in a magical boarding school. And in her last semester of this boarding school, she finds out that her father actually goes missing. And so she has to use her magic and all of the skills that she's learnt from this school to go and try and find him. This book screams fall to me for no other reason than necromancy, essentially. That's kind of what the free magic is like. And I just love this book so much. I think that it's classed as a middle grade, but it's definitely got dark undertones in it, and I would highly recommend this to everybody who likes the Wayward Children series. I think they would really like this book. The next book on my recommendations list is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I cannot make a fall recommendations list without having at least one V.E. Schwab book on there. So essentially this book is a dark academia book about Victor and Eli, who are lab partners in their college, trying to figure out how humans can become extraordinaries, or EOs. Those are essentially people who have had a traumatic experience and essentially end up gaining powers from that. And so it's kind of like a book where these characters try to pursue power and everything that goes wrong in between. This is a adult fantasy, and I will say that there are a lot of trigger warnings on here. So if you are triggered at all by any sort of gore or suicide, I would definitely hold back on reading this book because there are heavy themes of that in here. Also just really dark in general, but I love this book. It's kind of one of those books that just reminds me of the dark side of fall, and this is a perfect book to read during Halloween, I feel like. Definitely read this book if you haven't. If you haven't read it, what are you doing with your life? This is the gorgeous hardcover UK edition. It's got bones and stuff on the inside. I love the end pages, and it's also got a stamp on the front, which is beautiful. The third book on my fall recommendations list is In an Absent Dream by Seanan McGuire. This is the fourth book in the Wayward Children series, where children fall down portals and end up in magical universes on the other side. And this is about our main character, Lundy, who falls through a tree and ends up in the goblin market. So this is all about goblins and fair trade and promises, and it's got a lot of feminist undertones. It just reminds me of fall. There's so many themes of change in this novel, particularly within oneself, and so that's why I put this on this recommendation list. Also, the goblin market just screams fall and winter to me. This is a really, really good book. And also, you don't have to read all of the Wayward Children series in order. You can read them out of order because they're kind of standalone novellas within a series. It's really weird, but if you don't want to read all of them but you want to read this book, I would highly recommend it. It's a fantastic book. The fourth book on my fall recommendations list is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. So this is a Sherlock Holmes retelling in which Jamie Watson and Charlotte Holmes are descendants from the two very famous detectives, and they both meet at Sherringford, a boarding school in Connecticut, when a student actually gets murdered, almost exactly like somebody got murdered in the Sherlock Holmes stories. And so the two kids take it upon themselves to try and figure out what happened. And I recommended this for fall because the whole aspect of prep schools and pretentiousness just reminds me of fall for some reason. So I would definitely recommend this book to people who like the secret history, who are looking for something a little bit lighter, because Secret History is just, there's just so much in there, it's so dense. But if you're looking for something that's a little less dense, I would highly recommend this book. The fifth book on my fall recommendations list is The Archived by Victoria Schwab. So this is a young adult novel featuring our main character, Mackenzie Bishop. In this world, the ghosts are called histories, and keepers are tasked with taking histories and putting them from the real world into the archived, which is kind of like a library. So essentially the ghosts of this world are kept in vaults in a library, and it's really, really cool. I think that this embodies fall because it is a great Halloween read. I will say that there are a lot of trigger warnings with this one, particularly death and grief of a loved one, and then depression as well. This book talks about a lot of really, really hard things, and I just think that the whole aspect of archiving these ghosts in a big, huge library, essentially, it's just really, really cool. It is very creepy though. These histories, if they are left to become volatile in the real world, they do turn into monsters, and then keepers have to defeat them and send them back to the archive. And it's just really, really cool. I think that it's a perfect Halloween read, and it's one of my favorite books of all time. The next book on my fall recommendations list is Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake. This is kind of a weird one because it doesn't really have any fall themes within it, but it's again one of those dark fantasies that I connect with fall. I read a lot of fantasies during the fall, and I'm going to be doing a reread of this next month. So essentially the premise of this book is that three sisters have to duke it out essentially to become the queen of this world. And so they get put into this huge kind of like competition, and each queen has like different powers, and it's really, really cool to see that. It puts kind of like elemental magic on its head too, because you don't get just like the really, really basic like fire, water, earth sort of thing, although there are some stories that do that really well. You get like naturalists, there are people who ingest poisons and don't die from them, and then there are also people called elementalists who essentially can control all of the elements. Although it is like super tropey, I think that it's really, really interesting, and it really, really hooked me when I read it. I think I read this in like 2 days, which is really, really rare for me because I don't usually ingest books that fast. But I would highly recommend reading this for fall. Again, dark fantasies are like my shit during fall, so yeah. And the last book on my fall recommendations list is The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Weymouth. I have to rep this one because Laura is a Canadian and I love her, and this book is very, very near and dear to my heart. So I haven't really talked about this book a lot, but it is one of my favorites. Essentially, it is a retelling of the Chronicles of Narnia. It's a little bit different, but this is all about like the internal struggles of mental health. So essentially, it involves all of these kids that go away to this magical land and the aftermath of when they come back home and can't return to this magical land. It deals with a lot of depression, suicidal ideation, self-harm. It is very much a internal focused book, and I picked this one for fall again because it connects me to all of those feelings of change within fall, and I would highly recommend reading this book if you are a fan of Narnia. Again, I will say that it is very similar to Narnia, but again, there are a lot of changes. Essentially, the author basically said, why do these kids not get depressed when they come back from Narnia? And so she wrote her own version, and I really enjoy this book. And I think that the mental health issues that are dealt with in this novel are not only dealt with sensitively, but also they are portrayed in a very real perspective. And I really appreciated that about this book, actually. So if you like fantasy books with mental illness in them, I would highly recommend this. And there you have it. Those are the 7 recommendations that I have for you for fall. Sorry if this video was kind of chaotic. I've been fighting with my ring light for forever, and the lighting might be a little weird, but that's fine, I guess. If you liked this video, then feel free to give it a thumbs up and comment down below if you have any fall recommendations for me. I would love to hear them. I'm always looking for more fall-esque books, and there were a couple of other ones that I wanted to include in here, but I didn't want to be super cliche, and I wanted to bring something a little bit new, so hopefully these books aren't too weird of recommendations. As always, all of my social media links will be down below if you'd like to follow me on my Twitter, my Instagram, or my Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!